There you get into whatever mechanism you come up with. If it's neglect, if it's an abuse, if it's an assault, whatever it is what it is. And things go through cycles. So you see things that, like, you get violence, you get a relaxation period, and then tension builds and they act out again. So let me, I was trying to cut this down, but let's go back. You actually have to do a scene investigation. So I do the autopsy. I call up the coroner, who again is not in this state, and he says to me, thank God was the comment by the coroner over here, he says, well, I'm with a customer at the auto parts counter right now. Can I get back to you when I'm done? And yes, he did talk like that. Yeah, you can do that. So I call the investigative agency. And the investigative agency does a complete investigation. The agency's all over this. So they send people down. The family says, well, you know, she had schizophrenia. What she used to do is take this sliding glass door and slide it into her arm. And that's what caused those injuries on her hands and feet. Really? So they investigated the bathroom, and I can tell you that doesn't look anything like the pattern of that sliding glass door. But they bought that. Agency actually bought that. But they did do a complete scene investigation, and this is the room where the lady regularly stayed. This was her bedroom. What do you see here? And again, this is the danger of not actually doing a scene and people that don't. I was a scene pathologist. I'm kind of the exception rather than the rule. When I was in training, I went to every scene. And we had a great system back then. We had a dual coroner medical examiner system. It was great because you had two sets of eyes, both qualified to look at stuff. It was great. And you could professionally talk to each other and come to an understanding. Unfortunately, that's very, very sadly, for some unpleasant reasons, that system no longer is. And that's a tragedy, because I think you get more working with other folks. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with each other, by the way. Because sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes they're wrong. But we again, just like using the history, physical, and clinical, the lab stuff, I'm the best chance for success when I put it all together. So I trained here when I was in Alabama, went to every homicide scene, every unusual death scene. Since I left all that, and that's like, 14 years of experience working scenes as a medical examiner. A lot of medical examiners, I would wager, don't go to scenes and may not get scene photographs. I demand from day one, I want to see the scene photographs. That doesn't mean I'm always successful, but I always request them. Always request them. And if I need them, I know I need them. What's really sad to me is you've got people that don't work scenes at all and are in a medical examiner's office. They don't work scenes at all, and yet the first thing they want to do is bring up the scene photographs that they've never been to the first crime scene. They don't understand the first thing about it. And I'm doing the autopsy and trying to understand what is important. And it amazes me that there are agencies like that out there. But there are. Anyway, let's go back to this scene. I walk in this door. What's the first thing that catches my eye? Well, somebody's working on the floor, right? So that's obvious. But let's get a little closer. There's not one but two chairs, and I see a gown there. And and there looks like some kind of restraint type thing. And there's a TV. Why would you have a chair next to a TV? Well, I'm thinking that, maybe the person stays there. And why would I have a stool next to a chair? Like maybe feeding somebody? Again, I don't have any proof of this. I'm just looking at the scene and making observations. But I'm trying to integrate my understanding of the case with what I see here. It doesn't work the other way around. Because if I look at the scene first, without actually personally working it, I am biased. Just looking at these pictures, I'm biased. And I have to recognize the bias, by the way. How am I biased? I'm looking at someone else's interpretation of the scene and what they thought was important, which may not be what's important here at all. Because the most important part of this scene to me is back here. What is it? What's so important? There's a lock on the outside of the door. Oh! What does that mean? Why would you have somebody in a chair in front of a TV with a door that locks from the outside? Again, I'm not a cop, but I'm going to raise these kind of questions. And I might ask somebody like Mike Weber, hey Mike, can you check this out for me? I have issues with it. Now, you want the kicker in this whole case? This was a case where the lady lived with children. And I had started getting calls from another child. Said, what happened to my mama? What happened to my mama? Multiple blunt force injuries with dehydration and pulmonary thromboembolism. Also the bed sore on the back. Well, what happened to her? They had a hearing. This case has never been prosecuted. They refused to prosecute this case. And I have the most tearful messages from the daughter repeatedly because nobody would listen to her. Nobody would talk to her and explain to her what happened to her, what happened to her mother. And all I can do is tell her what I know. And when you have a medical examiner jurisdiction that doesn't have the ability to do anything other than merely move sheets of paper across a desk, there's something terribly wrong with that. And there's also something terribly wrong with any agency that would allow that to happen and to condone things like that and to not force a prosecution or at least a serious investigation into this. There may not be enough to prove criminal intent here. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know everything. But I know this case begs for justice for that victim. And I know that my patient in this case was denied that justice. So, am I a demanding person? You might have gotten the clue that, yeah, I'm demanding. I'm demanding for a reason. And you've heard me say this repeatedly. There's no margin for error in my line of work because people's lives and deaths are literally hang in the balance. Their freedoms. And I'll show you a case in a second here of that. If you can go ahead and move it to that. But think about it. It's not just my patient's life that they've already either been deprived of or they're living and they're living through hell. What about the family, the daughter of that lady that never gets justice? What about the people that never answer for what they did? Or what about the person that's wrongly accused? All of those people's lives hang in the balance. And if I don't demand that perfection, then I have failed my patient. And I have failed every one of those people. And I've also failed the city in which I live. Because I am a public servant, a steward of the public trust, a steward of the public trust. That means I have a moral duty to do right by them. And I take that trust as a very sacred obligation on my part. Let me show you one more case here. It is kind of related to what we've been talking about, but it's a different type of victim. This is not an elder case. This is a different one. This is about cognition and knowing what's going on. This case is a military trial. It's a little complicated, so I'll try to get it as tight as I can to break it down for you. Guy is getting ready to be deployed. All right, young kid. His unit is military police. Okay, he's getting ready to be deployed. He lives with two guys. One we'll call Dolph. All right, that's one of his roommates, and Dolph is kind of a gun nut. He likes guns. He's also got another roommate. We'll call him Chuck. Okay. So Chuck is a very quiet guy, very passive, and Dolph is not. Well, this case involves the third roommate, and we'll call him Bill. All right? So Bill's getting ready to be deployed, so Dolph and Chuck decide to throw a party for him. Isn't that awesome? Throw a party for him. And they invite all these people, except they're not Bill's friends. They're Dolph's and Chuck's friends. All right? So they have this party and everybody's drinking beer, and I think some of the players, at least one, underage. So you got 3 active duty military people, and one's underage, at least. Well, they also invite other military law enforcement agency people to the party. Well, Bill has had some issues with that particular branch in the past. Doesn't care for them. All right? One thing leads to another, and Bill's been drinking a lot. Everybody's drinking. Comments are made, and you can, stories vary. But they get into an argument. He gets taken down to the ground at least 3 times. He is restrained by that law enforcement branch he doesn't really care for so much. He gets, bad things happen. So, they finally, the 3rd time, they choke him, handcuff him in his own house, take him into the back bedroom, and go like any normal person would when you've got some guy who's being violent to the point where you take him down. Dolph and Chuck and the rest of the gang get a cooler of beer and go into the garage to talk about it. What are we going to do next? Well, the next thing you know, Bill comes out, and now no longer are his hands cuffed behind his back. He's now cuffed in front. And he's got a gun in his hand. He comes into the garage, sweeps the room with the gun, never stopping and pointing, sweeps the room with the gun. Chuck goes, "Oh my gosh, be cool. Nothing's happened yet." And he comes up to Bill and be cool, nothing's happened. They go around the corner. Nobody else sees what happens. They hear a shot. And as it happens, Chuck has a gunshot wound to the chest. This is represented by the star here. You can see the first rib there. The shot goes underneath that first rib through the left lung, missing the heart and the aorta. Comes out the back. I think that's the 8th rib, if memory serves, in back. He lives, so it's not as bad as it might be. He's looking at 60 years. 60 years. 7 counts of attempted murder, or whatever the legal variant of that is. Okay? Threatening with a weapon. Anyway, he's looking at 60 years. Well, you know how courts work. Can we work out a deal? 12 years. 12 years if you please. No, I don't think so. We're willing to go 2. No, we're not doing that. We're going to trial. So go to trial. And the state or the prosecution had this version of events. You're looking at, and I tell you, one of the things I love doing, I am a geek. I'm actually a court certified geek. I kid you not. Twice in court, my judge has said, "Dr. Downs, you're a geek, right? Can you fix a PowerPoint?" "Yes, sir, I can." And it's pretty good on multiple different levels when the defense says, "Yeah, Doc, can you help me with the PowerPoint?" That says a lot, because number one, they know I'm a geek. But at number 2, that says they also trust me and know that I'm honest. Okay? That they know I'm not going to do anything. Because, again, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just there to tell the story. Whatever it is, it is. So the prosecution event has the 2 of them by the kitchen counter here, and shot rings out and goes, according to their version, and you're looking from the back of the shooter. It comes from that angle, and you see the back to the counter. The bullet goes into that counter, into the cabinet, 6 feet off the ground. All right? So here's the shot that goes through Chuck's body. All right? Remember, the cabinet is to his back. Bullet hole is 6 feet exactly from ground level with the shot into the cabinet. Jack's shaking his head like he doesn't buy this story. I can only tell you it is what it is. So these are the actual crime scene photographs. All right? I did this case, and I have to work with the crime scene photographs that I've got. There are no crime scene diagrams, by the way. So it is what it is. I created this from their crime scene photographs. There's a scale model, because we know it's 6 feet as it happens. Chuck is 6 feet tall. So I take his body, place it into that scene with the top of the head. You can see the hole in the kitchen cabinet, 6 feet up. Now, he would be facing, on the left-hand side, he'd be facing you, right? Because the shooter was in front of him. Yes or no? Again, I don't see that angle working here, people. Unless he's standing on his hands. Again, remember the angle that we're talking about. Down. So, I'm looking at that and I'm looking at the scene and I go, I don't think so. But, did I mention it's not rocket science? Look at that! Wow, I now have an upward angle, right? So, could he be bending over and do that? Well, as it happens, in the confines of that space where they had him located, where all the blood evidence was, which is why they placed him there, that doesn't work. You can't get that kind of angle because, again, he'd have to be basically grabbing his ankles and doing this, and it was a close range shot, by the way. So that doesn't work. And I say it's close range because the jacket had gunshot residue on it, which, not to get overly technical, I'm not a firearms examiner, but medical examiners encounter stuff on a pretty regular basis, and I'm very comfortable saying that shot happened within a couple of feet. That doesn't mean 24 inches. It means within a couple of feet. It wasn't contact. It wasn't 3 feet away. It probably, based on what it is, within about a foot, maybe a little less. Also, by the way, I looked at the evidence, and that's an important thing to do when you're doing a case, is actually look at the evidence and consider all the data points. This was examined by the crime lab, firearms examiner, who agreed with the range of fire estimate, by the way. But here's the thing. The jacket had 5 holes in the report by the firearms examiner. Now, this bullet exited the body, 5 holes in the jacket, and the projectile is found inside that kitchen counter, or inside the cabinet. Anybody have a problem with that? 5 holes in the jacket, or excuse me, wait a minute. Yeah, 5 holes in the jacket. Well, here's the thing. Again, it's not rocket science. Let's just take the body because that's generally what I do. If I have 1 bullet hole in the body, where's the bullet? In the body. If I have 2 holes in the body, where's the bullet? If I have 3, where is it? In the body. If I have 4, so even numbers are out, odd numbers are in. 5 means where's the bullet? Has to be inside. So if there are 5 holes, it's inside the jacket. Or something really weird is going on. And this isn't one of those. Firearms examiner missed 3 holes. 3, which didn't ever come up in court. But I saw it and photographed it. I'm telling you, they missed 3 holes. And by the way, the forensic scientist who was working on this case and I are looking at this, and we're both like, 3? So, something's odd here. So I'm knowing that the accounting here is not right. There's something off here. So when I take that scale model and bend it and get that angle in order to fit, because there's actually 2 holes in that cabinet, and the arrow the tip is right at the second hole in that cabinet. So we have a direct trajectory. So all I have to do is walk back from that line to the point. And the point actually isn't there in the kitchen where the cabinet is. It's actually in the adjoining sitting area next to the couch and the lazy boy. And actually, that lazy boy, look at how square everything else is. You've got lines. See how square the couch is? And none of the pillows are disturbed. The chairs. Even look at the backpack in the distance. Everything is very neat. That lazy boy is canted. Oh, and by the way, the yellow circle there on the floor, that's a spent shell casing. As my daughter would say, which is great. That's how we communicate now. So, What do you think? Well, here's what I think. I don't know this is what happened, but I think that Chuck is going, be cool, nothing bad has happened, nothing bad has happened. Bill is retreating. Bill has got his handcuffs on and he's doing this. And what happens next? He's walking backwards like this. He hits the lazy boy. What happens? He falls. The chair gets knocked out of line. He shoots his friend. And they're good friends. After I testified, the prosecutor, I'm told, I didn't hear it, turns to co-counsel and says, and this is the quote, "Oh shit." Then, immediately, lesser included charges, immediately, and as it ends up, I think, he got, out of the military, dishonorable discharge, but he ends up serving a year with credit for the 6 months he's already served. He ends up with 6 months instead of 60 years. All from saying, he needs an honest and ethical expert, and to tell me that I can't do that because I happen to work for this agency, you don't allow me. That's why I said, and I don't remember if I told you this or not, I'll look at any case for the defense, and when I was with the agency, they wouldn't allow me to do it. I would say for free. But now this is what I do for a living, so it's no longer for free. I do have to, pay for 4 daughters. Did I mention that? But I will tell you this, what you've just seen, this series of slides, when I finished testifying, one of the experts on the other side came up and said, "That's awesome. How did you do that? What software did you use?" And I said, "I used this, but it's not going to do you any good." And he came up to me the next day. He said, "I got that software that you told me about, but I can't get it to do any of that." And I said, "I told you it wasn't the software. Because it's not. And I'm sorry, but that's what I do for a living now. So, I'm not going to give you everything, but, and I think the next slide, is this the last one or is it the one after this? This is the scenario that I placed in. I think I created this after the fact. I didn't play this in court, but now I probably would because I think it does a lot of good. That's the position I think they were in. And that kind of gives you a different look. But what I did is actually create the video that you're going to see here. And this is the very first time I have used this particular software, so it's very rough, and I apologize for that. But the trial had already finished, and I was just literally playing around with the case. Like the colors aren't right and that kind of thing. And it's not scaled because we didn't have any crime scene scale stuff to do it with. So that just kind of gets you a look at it, and that was my version. Here's their version. And one of the things I like, and again, I'm just playing around with this, I sped this tape up a lot and chopped it up, so it looks very choppy, and I understand that. One of the things you'll notice, though, is I don't make it look like reality. I do that for a reason. Some people like that. I can't tell you this is exactly what happened. I can only tell you this is what I believe happened. So I don't want to mislead somebody by saying, I know that they were doing this. I would much rather have the figures because you all get it. You can all see who is who. Now, might change a few things about this. Again, this was me just playing around with some new software going, wow, this is cool. Look what I can do. I can take this wall out and things like that. Anyway, that's an example of what can be done if you look at something. This is an individual. He was vulnerable. How was he vulnerable? What does it have to do with vulnerable victims? They were all drunk. All of them were drunk. That's another type of being vulnerable. Think about drug-facilitated sexual abuse, right? Same thing. Again, to me, no difference. I'm just looking at what I see, describing it the best I can, and trying to be fair with that. If we go to the next slide, which I think is the last slide I've got, and to kind of wrap all up this segment up, Mistreatment can range from birth literally to death and happen anywhere along that line. There's a lot, particularly in the medical examiner community right now, about physician-assisted suicide. Excuse me, we call that homicide. You can't assist a suicide. If someone else is actively involved in the process, it's a homicide. And I don't care who tells me, oh, it's a natural death. If you want to have integrity and be honest, if you believe it to be a suicide, then call it that. And let the chips fall where it may. I am so sick and tired of people not being willing to stand up and do the right thing for the right reason. Stand up. If it's a suicide, it's a suicide. If there's a stigma for that, okay, I understand that. I understand that. But you know what? That individual has an insurance policy. Well, in the old days, that's some of the reasons some people don't like coroners, some people, they'll say, well, I know Betty, she's had a hard life, and her husband committed suicide, and let's just help her with the insurance money because it's okay, it's not going to hurt anybody. Right? Happened all the time. And here's the thing about that. That sounds like a really good and noble thing to do to help somebody. You know what? I have an insurance policy too. And you paying off a $1 million policy is taking my money because it's a company that I invested in by buying a policy. So if you pay off on a false claim, you're taking my premium up because of paying off on a claim that shouldn't be paid. So you're actually stealing my money. And I'm very surprised that nobody has figured that legal angle out yet and tried to sue for that because it makes good sense to me. It's a reasonable, you have a fiduciary responsibility to me as a client to not pay off where you shouldn't. So something for you to think about. But even your last moment alive, you can still be a homicide victim. Your first moments in the world, you can be a homicide victim, and everywhere in between. And the weak people, the ones that need our help, need our help. Something that seems relatively minor, like a fall. If you push somebody over instead of them falling, guess what? If they die as a direct result of that fall, even if it's delayed a day, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, doesn't matter. If there's direct linkage with cause and effect, you go back to the initial event, it would be a homicide if they were pushed. If you don't have that support system in place, family, friends, loved ones, and remember, with elders in particular, who are the assailants? Who were over 90% of the assailants? Family and friends, right? Ridiculously small numbers happen in care facilities. Not every case is reported, so you have to remember that. And think about the victims and what they experience, the depression, anxiety, fear, loneliness. And who are they counting on? If it's your family that's doing this 90% of the time, is that fair game? Just something for you to think about. At this point, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that anybody might have. Do we have any questions? I've left you speechless. Either that or I've left you asleep. Any online questions? None online. I apparently have put everybody to sleep. With that, I thank you very much for your time and attention. And folks, I think we're so close. Can you taste it? We're going to take a break until 3:15, I believe is the hour, right? Oh, well then we're going to take a break till 3:30.